Doctor, it's a pleasure to speak to you again. You look very sharp in a suit. I appreciate your time. I know you've dressed up just for this show, so I'm grateful for that.
Well, it's because you're so important.
Exactly, because I am so important. And thankfully, I don't have hantavirus. Otherwise, a very important person would get hantavirus. But thankfully, my sneezes were not that. Another important person is bringing attention to a very important topic. Senator Rand Paul, had a whistleblower, James Erdman, testify to Congress, to the U.S. Senate, about the origins of COVID. And that's bringing attention to an issue that has completely been forgotten. We touched on it in one of our discussions not long ago, but we didn't really do a deep dive. What do we know about COVID so far? Because I remember before, the intelligence agencies were kind of split, but everyone that was following it closely kind of knew it was a lab leak. Maybe you disagree. From Wuhan, that's kind of the feeling that I got. So what's the conclusion, if we can call it that, now on the origins of COVID?
I think that it's now so what we've really been battling with, Mario, is not whether there was an awareness of what the origins were. It was pretty much self-evident. I mean, you had a outbreak in the beating industrial heart of China, Wuhan. Its geographic point of origin was within walking distance of the main Chinese research and development facility associated with coronavirus research, including gain-of-function research. And so it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this physical proximity certainly made a lot more sense than a trail of thousands of miles from a bat cave somewhere that involved transportation of pangolins or bats or God only knows what, specifically to the Wuhan wet market, which was the narrative that we were first told, and then plopping said bat into bat soup, which was trotted all over the world, those images of bat soup, as the justification for the origin of the virus within walking distance of the actual facility that does research and development and gain-of-function research on this particular category of coronaviruses. But there was and this is what James Erdman documents in his testimony, there was a concerted effort, particularly on the part of Dr. Anthony Fauci, to obscure this fact and to try to force the U.S. government to conspire with him, cooperate with him, enforce the narrative that this was of natural origin. A little bit of background about James Erdman III. Okay. Number one, he's a friend. You referred to the farm. He's been down to our farm. He came down a few years ago. He sought my counsel as he was grappling with issues about serving as a whistleblower back then, and what would become of his career. He is a CIA senior operations officer with 20 years approximately at the agency. This guy is CIA. He is hardcore. The slang is, we talk about the white hats. He's definitely a CIA white hat. He's one of the good guys. He was one of the founders of Feds for Medical Freedom, which is a little known group, unless you're in DC, of the, let's say, loyal opposition to the lockdowns and particularly the vaccine mandates that were imposed on federal employees. So he was one of the leaders of that little brush fire revolt within the federal government that involved many very senior people within the U.S. government that objected to what was going down, particularly under the last presidency. And so Erdman was marginalized, let's say, and he has deep roots with the agency. I don't want to discuss further about those, but he has a good reason to want to stay on the good side of that particular agency. not to mention the fact that it's notoriously has got, what was it, the saying, 10 ways from Sunday to screw you if you cross it. And this is something certainly that folks in the Middle East and throughout the world are well aware of. So Erdman is he's a good guy. He's a family man. He is a bona fide objector to some of the most egregious policies that went down during the COVID crisis, and served as a organizer of opposition within the U.S. federal government. So he's one. We talk a lot about the failure of courage that occurred widely in the academic enterprise among the, we could call them court intellectuals throughout the U.S. government, and really the European Union, across the world, in relation to the, I'm calling it grifting, that went on during the COVID crisis in so many different dimensions. He has been working for Tulsi Gabbard. And I visited him at that facility where he's been working, and shared with him information about my own experiences and knowledge concerning what happened during COVID. And he was tasked with a group that was responsible for investigating, among other things, what happened during COVID in the context of the intelligence agency, which Tulsi Gabbard has oversight responsibility for. So this is called, let's see, I make sure I get the words right. The Directors Initiative Group, or DIG, is the acronym that he was seminal with. And so he has had the authority to look into what took place. And in fact, I am personally aware that he had real world, real-time awareness of what was going on in this key group that assessed the intelligence information that was coming in about the COVID lab origins. And that group included Dr. Anderson, that is notoriously associated with the cover-up, as well as, I recall, Daszak sat and continues to sit on this study group that made the earlier determinations that were publicized that the CIA believed that the virus had a natural origin. What James has documented is that Tony Fauci was allowed to come in and influence that group, which was entirely inappropriate, basically strong-armed them to come up with a decision about the lab origins that in the natural origin thesis that was aligned with his own interests and public statements. And then at the very end of the last administration, you'll recall that suddenly there was this turnabout, and this CIA position that was misaligned with some of the other government groups that had come to different decisions, suddenly changed its narrative and said, sorry, we got it wrong, metaphorically. And it was actually a lab leak or a laboratory origin. Personally, Mario, you asked what I believed. I've always believed that it originated in the gain of function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology with assistance from various other third parties, including UC Davis, Ralph Barrick, and others. Involving
how
technology.
did it leak? How do you think it leaked? Just accidentally?
This is where I'm getting. Okay, this is precisely, Mario, and you're asking the key question. How the virus went from the contained laboratory environment into the wild is unresolved. and at this stage, probably unresolvable because the CCP or the PLA, leadership in military leadership or civilian leadership, quote unquote, civilian in China, came into that laboratory and destroyed the records and also blocked any investigation. And the investigation that was done was through the WHO, and it involved Chinese scientists leading the investigation. Essentially, it was not an independent investigation. It was a cover-up. And so the consequence is we're never going to be able to get to the bottom of it. But there was a record of a problem with biocontainment and the integrity of the biocontainment facilities that aligns more or less with the event. But I've always said that we don't have sufficient information to rule out intentional versus unintentional release. I think the record is quite clear that the virus originated in that laboratory, but there still remains a number of very strange observations, like the fact that the Chinese government did not stop international travel from Wuhan at the time of the outbreak in the Chinese New Year, which is a traditional time of a diaspora from China back to, out to other nation states, traditionally, as well as a diaspora within China. It shut down people's traveling from Wuhan to other places in China, but it didn't stop people moving from China and traveling to Europe, the United States, Africa, etc. So that just kind of doesn't compute unless there was some nefarious action there.
What's your explanation of that? That's very bizarre. I did not know that. Because if they are worried about a potential pandemic leaking, either they're not worried and they close nothing, or they're worried and they close all travel. But for them to close domestic travel but not international travel.
Precisely. Something's rotten in Denmark. It just doesn't. It doesn't.
China.
Compute. Yes. So I'm alluding.
I know. I know.
So,
some people might not know, so I just want to make sure it's China.
There's still a huge cloud of mystery around this, and that includes many reports that leap back in time. Earlier in the fall of 2019, you recall this is COVID-19 because it appears to have first emerged during the official narrative is late 2019. But there is some evidence suggesting that military personnel that participated in the military games in China much earlier in 2019 were also infected and exposed. So there's a whole cloud of ambiguity around all of this that is still unresolved, inadequately investigated, and appears to have been very actively covered up and
Did you say military personnel, American military personnel?
Correct.
I remember that story, and China was using it as a way to blame Americans for bringing the virus into China back during the information warfare. But you're saying though they were infected when?
As I recall, this is like fall or late summer, but I don't have the dates. I remember very clearly the late fourth quarter 2019 events, including the death of a key whistleblower physician in China, but
Really?
I don't have the dates for the military games. Yeah.
A whistleblower physician in China that was vocal, I'm guessing, on COVID-19 was killed.
He died of the disease.
Oh. How many people died approximately from COVID?
So, Mario, that's one of the things, and Secretary Kennedy was asked directly about that in testimony on the Hill. And I think I have to defer. I agree with his explanation. We don't know. The problem is that the accounting for the deaths was distorted, let's say, by bad testing, bad PCR assays, and various financial incentives that incentivized hospitals and others to over-report COVID deaths, as well as under-report harms associated with the vaccine. So the truth is that all of the data are unreliable. Here in the United States, and really globally, we were subjected to daily reports of deaths in the United States having to do with a COVID tracker that was published by Johns Hopkins that kind of became the international standard for tracking this. It turns out that was all based on modeling. That wasn't actual counts. So the honest truth is we don't know, and it may be unknowable in terms of what the true mortality was in morbidity. We have a lot of modeling that was biased, contrived, and from laboratories that historically over-report prior infectious disease outbreak morbidity and mortality. In this, Mario, this is covered. Well, how do I say it? I'm in the middle of writing a book about what transpired during COVID that is reframing this as a massive grift. And it documents the whole history of mismanagement, misreporting, exploitation of infectious disease outbreaks by a variety of parties, including academics, governments, and notoriously the media. All of these entities all profit from promoting fear-based narratives associated with these infectious disease outbreaks. And we've got, and it really opens up, particularly in this case where you had massive amounts of cash that were thrown at the, ostensible problem with very little controls or constraints about the potential abuse or misuse of that capital. And it resulted to one quote that is absolutely supported by the data: the most massive upward transfer of wealth from the middle class to the wealthy in modern history.
Really?
Just a huge economic wealth transfer in power, extended authority, and we all lived it. We lived it in the various mandates. I don't know what your experience was where you were during all this, whether you were in the Middle East or what. Remember, we couldn't travel. I remember clearly being on Lufthansa and being reprimanded by late in the COVID outbreak for not having a mask on. It just went on and on and on, and these measures were not justified, and they were erratic. They were, we had notorious flip-flops over a variety of policies, and many of those policies were truly arbitrary and capricious, notably the 6-foot distance rule that was implemented globally, and all the way through the vaccine mandates.
When did you realize it was a lab leak?
So you may or may not recall my story. I've written about it in prior books and spoken about it on many podcasts. I got a call from a CIA officer that you can't be in biodefense and not interact with the CIA. They're all over this in the United States. And I got a call from a CIA officer that I had previously published with relating to Zika that indicated that he was in Wuhan and that I needed to focus on and pull together a collaborative group to focus on addressing a novel coronavirus that had emerged in Wuhan. And that call, as I recall, was January 6th of 2020. Then when the viral sequence became available in the 10th or 11th of that January, I downloaded it and started working with it, my group, trying to use computational methods to identify repurposed drugs. And in that analysis, and those of many others, it strongly indicated that this was an engineered pathogen. And that, together with the information about the Wuhan Institute of Virology, led me to question my CIA contact who had alerted me to this originally. And by the way, was the one that managed the Diamond Princess situation. He was the one that imported the ventilator protocols in the United States, et cetera, because he worked in Wuhan for a couple of months supporting the Chinese government in their clinical management of these cases before he came back to the United States. So I questioned him about the indications that this was a engineered virus of laboratory origin. And his response was, quote, "My people have been all over this sequence and there's absolutely no indication that it was engineered." That was a lie. But I took it at face value at the time. Over time, it became clear that it was a lie. And the furin cleavage site is the smoking gun associated with that. But there's many others. It was, really, I was aware of all of these things before official Washington was even acknowledging that they had a problem about March or April of 2020.
So what does that say about our world, that gain of function research, which is what coronavirus research was, is under the concept of gain of function research, the study of gain of function. If that's continuing, and it is continuing
Yes.
by private companies around the world, despite being legal gray zone in some countries, it's just done abroad instead. If that's continuing, and we just had COVID leak, I know you said to me last time that engineering a virus that has a high fatality rate and infection rate is very difficult. That's a positive thing. But now with artificial intelligence, it just, like many other things, it just became a lot easier.
It's
all these things,
more plausible now than it was before that capability.
if we just, only 6 years ago, and like everyone remembers those days, such a virus did leak without the advent of AI and killed millions of people. How come no one's talking about it now? I don't get it. How come no one's worried now? Or are they? We just don't know about it. Because no one brings it up anymore.
Well, you're talking about social media when you're talking about no one.
Yeah.
Specifically,
And the press.
President Trump, in the press. So in corporate media, that storyline is no longer generating clicks, likes, and follows. So that's why we're not hearing it.
Exactly.
But President Trump has authorized that he desires to see a development of an international treaty to ban gain-of-function research. Secretary Kennedy endorses that there should be an international ban on gain-of-function research. The group at the State Department that I've been interacting with in the context of the how do I say it?
It's classified, doctor. It's classified.
No, it's not classified.
Okay.
The treaty on the Biowarfare Convention. Okay, so this is a UN treaty that was driven largely, I think it's 1969 when it was implemented, between largely the main protagonists were the United States and then Soviet Union, which both had active biowarfare development programs, agreed that they were going to stop doing that. What, in the case of the United States, what continued, and I can't speak to Russia, Ken Ellenbach indicated that those programs continued at some level. And there's evidence that there was an unintentional leak of anthrax spores in Russia that was evidence of a breach of the Biowarfare Convention. But there was a kind of an international decision and a decision on the part of the United States not to push the issue because of the diplomatic consequences.
Who leaked anthrax? Where? Why?
There was a leak in the former Soviet Union after the Biowarfare Convention was implemented.
What year was that? Sorry,
I don't recall the year.
Okay.
It's like
intentional though.
no, not intentional.
Okay,
No,
okay.
it was domestic.
Okay.
And we've had
No, not international. Sorry, intentional, not international. Intentional.
not intentional. I
Okay.
think inadvertent. It's a similar kind of situation, and we had evidence of that happening from Dugway Proving Grounds in the United States, with shipping live anthrax spores that were supposed to not be live. So that's documented, and then of course in the United States we had the anthrax spore letter event of 2000-2001 that really catalyzed the creation of the whole biodefense industrial complex. But what, Mario, all this gets classified, we use this euphemism gain of function research. The other phrase that's used here is dual function research, wherein ostensibly things are being done out of academic curiosity or whatever, however you want to phrase that, when in fact they also can be used for biowarfare purposes. So this is when you hear this phrase, dual function, what it's saying is that that R&D effort, enterprise, can be applied to vaccine development, risk mitigation, drug development, etc., that's legitimate, but the same tech and knowledge could also be applied for development of a biowarfare agent. So that's the nut, the kernel within the problem of gain of function research, is that it's dual function. And the things that we can justify because they might help us develop a vaccine, well, that's a little bit tenuous, are at the same time useful information if you want to develop nasty things to use against your enemies. So it drives home the point. This is very much, as we were talking about super soldier technology last time we spoke, and you correctly identified all of this as very akin to the thermonuclear warfare development, where we have mutually assured destruction in an arms race that's justified by this logic that, well, they're doing it, so we have to do it too.
Exactly. That's my
and
worry.
it's very convenient because who's telling you that they are doing it is the intelligence community that often are stakeholders in raising concerns. This kind of if the bad guys are doing this, so we have to do it too, is often coming from the very people that benefit from increased funding. So this is to frame it in the way that I'm framing it in the book. This is a form of grifting, wherein you have people that are stakeholders that are raising alarm and concern about things that they result in increased resources, power, programmatic support, etc. The gentle way to put it is there's a conflict of interest here, and somehow we have to, as I believe, as a global community, we have to make it clear somehow that this is not acceptable. We have to make it clear somehow that the ostensible academic curiosity that is being satisfied by gain of function research in virology or other pathogens is not sufficient justification for the risk. We know something about the risk now.
Well, people were warning about this even before COVID, and one thing they would say back then is like, what's going to happen is the world's going to have one big catastrophic pandemic that's going to wake everyone up to the dangers of dual function research or gain of function research, and finally bring policymakers
And yet,
rather than an action. Yeah, it happened. The pandemic happened, and still we're kicking the can down the road.
Precisely.
Ridiculous.
Because
because we are human.
One of the conclusions of the book is that we can come up, and I've come up with a nice list of policy changes that could be implemented that would make it unlikely that we would have another one of these hyped events that are exploited for power and money and everything else. But the organizational momentum, the players that did this have all escaped justice. Nobody's been held accountable. The governments involved have not been held accountable. I mean, how many times have you heard the press saying, oh, the CCP needs to be held accountable for what happened?
No one dares to do that. Yeah, politically.
It's zero. The number is zero. It's not happening. And so there is no accountability. There will be no change. And it's all set up to run this same game, this same grift again and again and again.
Oh, Doctor, can't wait. When's your book coming out?
Please. I've already, the one that's coming out right now is called Homesteading for Health. It's a very different theme. It's about nutrition and soil regeneration, like that. This one, we still have a lot of work to do on it. A lot of the analysis is completed, but we want to include a number of interviews of people that experience these things directly, political leaders and individuals. And that's going to take months to compile all that. So I suspect the soonest this one is going to emerge is going to be something like spring or late winter, certainly after the midterms.
No, it's not too long. Well, Doctor, absolute pleasure to have you on the show again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mario, for having me on again, and stay healthy.
Same to you, Doctor. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the conversation about a topic that I know doesn't get the clicks, but I think more people should be talking about, with one of the guests that has been leading the fight for transparency on this issue for so many years now. One of my favorite doctors, Dr. Malone. I hope you enjoyed it. That's it for me for today. I think it's interview number 8 today. So I'm done. I'm cooked. Let me see how many today we did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 interviews. All right, guys, I'm off to bed. I'll go through the comments later today, and I will see you again tomorrow. Have a wonderful night.